Hey crafters, just a reminder, this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered advice.
The views and opinions expressed are our own, and do not represent those of any company or business we currently work with, are associated with, or have worked with in the past. Thanks for tuning in to the Futurecraft Marketing Podcast. Let's get it started.
Hey there, welcome to the Futurecraft Go-to-Market Podcast, where we're exploring how AI is changing all things go-to-market, from awareness to loyalty, everything in between. I'm Ken Roden, one of your guides on this exciting new journey.
And I'm Erin Mills, your co-host, and together we're here to unpack the future of AI go-to-market. We're going to share some best practices, how-tos, interview industry leaders and pioneers who are paving the way in AI and go-to-market. So Ken, I got to show you something that I find truly incredible.
Okay.
You game?
Cannot wait.
Okay. So first off, I am going to say, I'm going to put this prompt in ahead of time because it does, like any deep research project, take a little bit of time. I did use the casino framework that Penn's team put out, which is context, audience, scope, intent, narrator, and outcome. I just like casino because I think it's easier than Rappel or some of the other ones to remember. But that's how I started. And so I'm going to go ahead and share. So first off, I am going to be in Gemini and I'm going to select Gemini Pro. I've tried this with, Gemini Flash. Good. But I actually find that Pro, if you have access to it, is a little bit better. And it's just pretty cool in terms of being able to do a lot of research really, really fast. I am using Gemini 2.5 Pro. So hopefully you have access to it. If you don't, you can also use Flash. I haven't found it to be quite as powerful, but I do think this is just really mind-blowing if you have the time to do a little bit of one-to-one account planning. And this really works great across the go-to-market teams. So Ken, what's a company that we should go after?
I think we should look at the company LiveRamp. Been doing some really interesting stuff recently.
Totally agree. I think let's check it out. So put LiveRamp in for my target company here. And then I'm going to select deep research. So similar to what folks have seen in ChatGPT, I'm going to say deep research and I'm just going to click go. Now, what's really cool here that's a little bit different than ChatGPT deep research is it'll actually put together a plan of how it's going to research. One thing that's a little annoying is I have to be start research, but it's kind of cool to think, what is it thinking about in terms of building this plan out? And also helps you to see as you're prompting it. So you can see this is the plan to tackle the process, and it's going to give you some cool sort of looking at the target personas that we might be targeting, and then also putting this outcome focused layer onto what the content ideas that it might come up with. And so we're going to just go ahead and start the research. And like all of these deep research projects, they can take some time. Now, what's I think is valuable with Gemini as well is it's going to look at hundreds of artifacts. Whereas I find sometimes with the ChatGPT research, it's looking at maybe 80 to 100. This is going to be hundreds and hundreds of websites. Already we're at 76 websites. And I've asked it to look at even outside of the website, the LiveRamp website, what have some of my personas been speaking at, different events they may have commented on, what's their social profile, which is pretty cool and also would take a lot of time if you were doing it manually.
Interesting that you call out one of the differences between Gemini and ChatGPT for research is that Gemini might be more comprehensive because of Google search background. I think that's a big differentiator when picking between Gemini or ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think that's a really great call out. And as you can see, it's it's really looking and combing some very interesting sites here where, it's looked at obviously their LinkedIn, but it's looked at things like podcasts that their folks have been on. And so I think that can be super compelling and make a much stronger case for, what they're actually talking about. Also, the YouTube piece is something that's going to be a differentiator as well for Gemini as it stands. So we're just going to go ahead and let this run, and then we'll be back in just a second. Great. And so it's done its business, and now it has given us an account-based strategy that we can take a look and pursue with our sales team, our demand gen team, our content team, whoever it may be. In this case, we've used our podcast as an example of a sample company that we're trying to pursue LiveRamp as a business opportunity. And it gives us an executive briefing, which is pretty cool. It gives us data collaboration is really where they're trying to make their mark. And then what also is really neat here is it's deconstructing their business model and what they really care about. And then kind of going through and seeing how could we as AI, let's say experts, come in and help support some of the initiatives that they're taking on. Now, I think one of the things that's super interesting here is it does also give some of the competitive, because I gave it some instruction to get that information, but it gives us a little bit of like, what are they facing? Like how we can like really put ourselves in their shoes. And then this is where I think some of the magic happens with the account mapping. And I've not seen another platform be able to do this, where I've told it basically, give me the persona, the key individuals, the core responsibilities, their mandate, anticipated pain points, and like, what would our value prop be for them? And how cool is this? It actually served up all the personas and gave me some fodder.
I think this is super interesting. One of the things that I have been hearing a lot of leaders who are looking at investing in some sort of AI transformation is that their CRM has huge gaps in their contacts. And they might be using some of those enrichment tools, but it's not giving them the complete view that I'm seeing you get around not just the contacts, but actually tying it to your business problems that your company can solve. So this is a completely different way of doing this. I think, like, I wonder how sellers react to this.
I had a seller I was talking to, and they said that they were going to cry. They loved it so much. And so what's really cool here is I can tie my, like, exactly to your point, tie my messaging with the value that we're going to drive for each one of these personas that it mapped out for me. I mean, that is pretty epic in terms of being able to create really bespoke one-to-one programs. Now, is it perfect? No, you're still going to have hallucinations, but like, obviously the more you feed it, the better it's going to be. But
I think this is a great starting point, right? And this is what you kind of want from AI, right? You want AI to do that V1 for you, and then you edit, you fill in the gaps, or you update. So I'm really impressed that people should check this.
Yeah. And the other cool thing about this is if you have G Suite, you can also export to Google Docs or just copy, whatever. But exporting is super easy versus like having to copy or save it as a PDF or whatever. It just gives you a Google Doc. The other thing that I think is really neat here is you have the opportunity to create an infographic or a quiz or an audio overview, which is going to be kind of the Notebook LM variety, or you can even like describe your own app of what you want it to do, which is like sky's the limit. And we're just going to do an infographic. Now, this is obviously not going to be what necessarily we would want, but just to show an illustration of like how quickly this thing can create something that you could essentially send out to this like one-to-one contact. It's pretty slick.
Yeah. It goes into that conversation around personalization. People are opening it with AI. You could run this, if you're an account executive, you could run this for your book, and we would only need 10 or 15 of them, and that's totally
100%. And I think what the other thing that I'm, using it with my team on is being able to have that connective tissue between the team, like the marketing team and the BDRs and the sales team. Like this actually creates a strategy doc so that you can go after these accounts in a very thoughtful, consistent way. And so, if I'm a sales rep, I know who these people are. If I'm a BDR, I have suggested messaging that's going to land with them much better than just something generic. And if I'm a marketer, I can come up with a total plan that's pretty cool. And so look at what it did in just a short amount of time, created this infographic on some of the research it did. And again, would we use this particularly? Maybe not, but I can chat with it to make something like really valuable and be able to create a pretty robust piece of content that would have been taken a couple weeks to do otherwise.
I think this is phenomenal. Yeah, it gives you something to react to.
Totally. So thanks. I'm a huge fan of it. I think that there is a lot of application for anybody who's doing, ABM plays or just personalization in general. Like it's just really cool how much information you can get.
Yeah. Okay. You got me all excited about AI and how improve work. Who are we talking to today?
We are talking to Ashley Faus, and she is a Atlassian OG, which, they've like written the playbook for a lot of B2B marketers out there on how to do it right. And she actually wrote a book recently that I highly recommend everybody pick up. And so I'm really excited to catch up with her.
Great. Well, let's do it.
Hi, everyone, and we're back. So today we're thrilled to welcome Ashley Faus, head of Lifecycle Marketing portfolio at Atlassian and author of Human-Centered Marketing, How to Connect with Audiences in the Age of AI. If you guys haven't read it, we will include a link in the show notes so you can pick it up. In more than 8 years at Atlassian, Ashley has spanned corporate communications, product marketing, and lifecycle leadership. She's become known for replacing traditional marketing funnel with her content playground model, advocating for audience trust over vanity metrics and showing how creativity, musical theater to elaborate cakes make us better marketers. Ashley, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
So, I alluded to it a little bit, but you've had such an interesting career journey from a classical singer to cake decorator, author, and obviously marketer. How have all those seemingly unrelated pursuits helped shape the way you think about marketing and audience relationships?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. While I do a lot of those things still as a hobby, I'm actually probably one of the few people who got my undergraduate degree in marketing and then got my MBA, but the concentration in marketing. And then I've been in marketing for my whole career. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I stumbled into marketing, or oh, I never meant to be a marketer. I pivoted from sales, right? And I'm like, oh no, I've been a marketer by education and trade for the whole time. But I will say that all of those hobbies, there's like the key thing behind all of those is this idea of bringing the humans into the mix. And so particularly from the singing, acting, kind of musical theater side of things, I tend to be in the ensemble. And so I'm constantly changing characters. And so from scene to scene, I'm constantly having to step into somebody else's shoes and figure out what's their motivation in this moment? How do they talk? How do they walk? Who are they in relationships with in this moment from scene to scene? There are tons of parallels in marketing with that of who is the audience? How do they walk? How do they talk? What are their pain points? What is their motivation? Who are their relationships with in these moments? And so that's been something that's been huge in marketing. You can't just start slinging assets and value props and channels and hope that you magically get the right marketing mix. So yeah, I can go down the whole rabbit hole with the baking analogies and the fitness analogies, but I try to do that more in one-off posts on LinkedIn versus derailing the entire podcast.
Oh, I love it. It's like the great British baking show. I could see like a marketing version right now, and you hosting it. But I guess one of the things thinking about like how laying out all those different elements, did that really help you to think about writing human-centered marketing and why really focus on AI now? Obviously, it's such a hot topic, but what brings that together for you?
Yeah. So I actually use quite a few of the analogies and the hobbies in the book. So one of the things I talk about, for example, is this idea of being in the in group. And I use some of my hobbies. So I ride motorcycles, I do kiteboarding, and there's like the motorcycle peace sign is a known thing in that community that if you ride past somebody on the motorcycle, you give them a peace sign. There's the Jeep wave, which I didn't realize was a thing, but I learned about it from a friend that basically if you're driving your Jeep and you see another Jeep, you just kind of do like a, kind of thing. And then in the surfer community and the kiteboarding community, the shaka. So like this little sign where you've got, the pinky and the thumb out and you're doing the wave, that is a sign that you are in the in group, for example. And so again, it's something that shows from a human perspective, you kind of only know what those symbols mean if you are actively engaged in the community and you are part of that. And so for me, being able to bring in a lot of those examples that prove that I'm in the trenches with you, I'm in these communities, this is a real human to human connection. That's the thing that AI cannot generate, right? AI has no experiences. It has to pull those experiences from a human. And so it's interesting because if I just ask, I'm sure I could ask ChatGPT, like, what are the hand signs for motorcycle riders? But I highly doubt that it would get it in the same way that I get it because I've ridden motorcycles, right? And some of the musical theater things, it's funny. I think about this sometimes with people who are new to the community theater. They don't know what the warm-ups are. They don't know how you're supposed to sit. And I've done it so much that for me, it's just like, okay, they play the chord and we all know which warm-up we're doing and we do the warm-up. But if you've never stepped foot into a rehearsal space, you have no idea that this specific chord or playing or whatever means that you are now supposed to sing this specific warm-up, right? So all of that definitely feeds into the book and kind of feeds into my practice of marketing. In terms of the timing of it, obviously AI is a hot topic. And I think that the hype cycle and the adoption cycle are mismatched and we're at peak hype cycle, but I think we're still very early in the adoption cycle. And my concern, as we've seen what's happened in the run-up, the hype cycle, is that we're going to forget about the humans behind the screen. Ultimately, AI is a tool. It is meant to help us help humans. And if we get so focused on running up the hype cycle and then blindly running up the adoption cycle, we're going to miss what it's actually supposed to help us do, which is to solve problems for people. And so It's funny, people are like, oh, you wrote a book about AI. Is it completely out of date right now? And I'm like, well, I didn't actually write a book about AI. I wrote a book about humans given the context of what we're seeing with AI. And so while I do touch on a few things in terms of tools and practices and, considerations from an AI perspective, the bulk of the book is really focused on how do we keep the thing that remains unchanged, which is that humans have problems. And as marketers, our job is to match problems with solutions for humans.
You talked about something that I really connected with, which is centered around trust. You say it's the thing you can't automate. Why does trust matter more than ever now in this AI era we're in?
I think that it has always been problematic, particularly with the rise of the internet, to be able to distinguish fact from fiction. And we've had the ability to lie at scale or misdirect at scale even before AI. But I think AI makes it a lot harder to tell fact from fiction and a lot easier to scale misinformation, disinformation, lies, etc. It's not the perfect image because that might be fake. It's not writing with perfect grammar because that might be fake, right? That moment that I can have in real time, looking at you, whether it's on a screen or in person, in the eyes and say, you're like me, you're in the in group, you know the vibes in the community, you know the language or the hand motions of the community. And that's where you can really start to say, you're like me, therefore I can trust you.
Yeah, I think it was Vogue too recently was like, people were all up in arms. And I'm like, these people look perfect before. Like, what's the difference? So it's kind of interesting. I like that. So you've said, the traditional funnel is retrospective and company centric, and that journeys, gee, can't read today. And journeys behave more like playgrounds. Can you lay out the content playground framework that you use and explain how conceptual, strategic, and tactical content create a frictionless audience journey? Because I think that's what we're all trying to get to.
Yeah. So I'll start with kind of some of the issues with the traditional funnel, because it basically just assumes that you as an audience member need to go on the journey that I as a marketer want you to go on, right? I'm going to push you down from awareness to consideration to decision. And the problem with that is we all agree humans do not behave in a neat linear fashion that way. Yes, it's true. A certain subset become aware of the offering, a certain subset seriously think about whether to buy, and then a certain subset buy. But in terms of saying, I as the marketer have decided that you're in the awareness now, like nobody wakes up and decides to be in the consideration phase. And, one of the classic example of this is pricing. So pricing is traditionally considered a bottom of funnel or purchase level conversation. But if you need to go secure budget to even start a conversation with a sales rep, you have to have some sense about what the pricing is. We've convoluted all of this. So the model that I propose is this idea of a playground where you can go up, down, sideways. You can use the content the wrong way, right? I have nieces and nephews. You're supposed to go down the slide. Of course, they want to go up the slide, right? And so that classic example of pricing where, we're supposed to sell them the value first and then give them the pricing. No, everybody needs the pricing up front so we can figure out if we can even have a conversation. So the conceptual, strategic, and content depths get paired with an intent. And so this is where the conceptual is the what and the why of the idea. It helps the audience think about and understand the problem space. Strategic is the tools, process, and key knowledge components that have to be in place to make the conceptual idea reality. And that equips the audience to do their own research and to think about and understand the solution space. And then tactical, this is your nitty-gritty tips. This is where the rubber meets the road, the daily habits or tasks that have to be done to implement the strategy to make conceptual ideas reality. Could sell you personal training services, a gym membership, a food delivery subscription service, a meal planning template, protein supplements, right? There's a lot of stuff that I could sell you. And that gets to the other piece of it, which is the intent piece of it. So as marketers, we primarily like buy intent content. So buy intent content is anything that's going to help you give us money. What's going to push you closer to giving us money? So in that case, our call to action is something like sign up, book a demo, contact sales, activate your account, activate a free trial, right? Like all of that is buy intent content. We also really like use intent content. And that's particularly true in my industry of SaaS, because I know that in order to keep getting you to buy and rebuy and renew, you have to actually get value from the product. So I want you to use it. So things like logging in, use a template, attending office hours if you're a service business, right? That would all be indicative of use intent. The problem is there's other intents besides buy and use. So there's trust or affinity intent, which is a little bit of a circular definition, but it's like, it's content that generally makes people trust you, like you, feel that you are smart, right? Have a better perception of you. There's also help or remediation intent. So helping you troubleshoot a problem. For example, if your login is broken, you need a password reset, you can't figure out how to set something up. That would be that help or remediation intent. In a lot of companies, that sits in a separate team. It's in the customer success team or the support team. But again, when you think about it across the entire life cycle of a customer or a user, that is a very important part of that full life cycle. And then finally, true learn intent content, that might be the practices, it might be processes, it might just be information or trends, but it really only requires someone to think about what they've consumed or maybe share it or discuss it with their teams, right? It doesn't require them to give the company money or engage with the company's products or services. So that's how I like to think of it. You basically take, okay, what are these core topics that we need to be talking about? At what depth are we speaking about them? And you do need that mix of conceptual, strategic, and tactical. And then what is the intent of that piece of content? And that's how you could build this seamless, impactful journey for both your team and for the audience so that it's, never ending, but it allows them to go up, down, and sideways.
So I got to be honest, Ashley, the playground sounds fantastic to me, but it's a bit abstract, especially when I first started reading about it. How can you talk to our audience about translating the model into a concrete GTM plan, especially right now when you just mentioned this, but leaders are just trying to get people to buy into an AI initiative in general. So how are you thinking about making this something that a team can absorb and implement without kind of getting overwhelmed by the process?
Yeah. So I give kind of step-by-step instructions for this in the book. And then I've also done this with a number of teams, both internally and externally. So, and you'll hear folks talk about this in terms of content pillars, topics, themes, etc. But understanding basically which arena you're going to play in is the first big thing. So I recommend we run narrative workshops internally at Atlassian, kind of using this framework in terms of think about all the things we could say that we have credibility to talk about, that tie in with our products, that address our audience needs, and that we can ultimately talk about, right? Look at that whole universe of stuff and then start to group it together. You should be finding some commonalities. If you've got one big clump, and you can do this with sticky notes. In our case, we did it with Confluence whiteboards. So we did sticky notes on Confluence whiteboards, which gives us a nice advantage because then, again, speaking of how we use AI, I used Rovo to then basically look at all the sticky notes and the call notes and then put together, basically give me an initial kind of strategy based on that. And then obviously as the human, I had to go in and clean it up, but keeping it all in our ecosystem was really helpful. So put all those things on sticky notes, start to group them together. If you just have one massive sticky note pile, then you probably need to start breaking those into some subsections, right? If we use Atlassian as an example, right, we could just say all the sticky notes go into the teamwork pile. And it's okay, well, we got to talk about something other than just teamwork. Let's see if we can break that into some subcomponents, right, based on our audience and based on our product offerings and the types of problems we solve. Once you do that, then you can go through and start to mark things at the conceptual, strategic, and tactical levels. So for us, we actually have something called the Team Playbook, and it includes a mix of all different types of content and intents from a depth and intent perspective. So ultimately, the Team Playbook is to help your teams work better together and move work forward. So for example, it includes a play about setting OKRs, so objectives and key results, and talking about how to tie your goals to your work so that everybody is aligned in terms of what they're working on and how it supports the company goals. From a conceptual level, right, we talk about the importance of aligning work to goals. Regardless of whether you buy Atlassian products, that is a core concept for how teams work together, how they stay motivated, how leaders help set priorities, and how people track work. And then we've got a mix of strategic and tactical content in terms of learn intent, use intent, And then, yes, there is some buy intent, right? Because again, you can do all of this in our products. And so then we basically translate all of those big pillars and kind of the big pillars along with the different depths into an editorial calendar, which then we work with our campaigns team to determine which assets we need, how those assets are getting created, where they're going to go in terms of landing pages, content syndication, paid ads, social media, et cetera, emails, and which CTAs they will lead to. And then obviously, if you're on a landing page, we'll have maybe a buy intent CTA or a use intent CTA, along with, a learn intent CTA or a trust intent CTA. So that's one example of in terms of how it comes to life in something like the Atlassian team playbook and how it translates from kind of a content marketing and a communications perspective into a campaigns perspective. And then obviously from a product marketing perspective, you got your launches in there as well, which is going to be use intent or buy intent content from a product perspective.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I've recently got into Notebook LM and creating the mind maps and that sticky note. Like I was like, oh yeah, like that would be such a great way to do that and break down the ideas. Cause I think any team, like, it's like, oh yeah, we have this big problem. Like, let's put everything in this one big, like conceptual thing. And then you're like, well, what else do we write about? I don't know. So
content. So I call this modular content, not snackable. Snackable implies that like your audience can't digest a heavy meal or that they don't want a heavy meal. And I'm like, no, man, yeah, sure. Sometimes they want snacks, but sometimes they need a proper meal or big slice of cake, but you can tweak the angle it adapts.
Yeah, I think it raises such a good point because there are so many times when teams are like, oh, I did this great piece of content. Of course they're going to buy. And you're like, they are probably like, it is a great piece of content, but they may forget it or like they may only see it once or whatever. And Ken and I had this mentor at one point who one of her favorite sayings was like, repetition doesn't ruin the prayer. And it's kind of like that, it is kind of like the like you reinforce the message and roll it up and bring it back down. And it's so noisy out there. So it's also really hard to break through. But switching gears a little bit, I think one of the words I hate most in the English dictionary is silos. And would love to get your thought and how you break down some of those artificial walls between whether it's, product, whatever it may be, sales, and build an integrated ecosystem. What does that look like day to day for you and your team? And how do those teams really measure success together?
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting challenges is that a lot of people don't understand that they're actually speaking different languages. And because I've sat across so many different teams, so when I worked at smaller companies and was kind of the marketing person, so I did all the product marketing, all the demand gen, all the content marketing, and then now holding roles across multiple specialist teams at Atlassian, I've heard how everybody talks about things. And it's fascinating. Sometimes I sit in rooms, with, in theory, my peers, and I'm just like, man, we are not talking about the same thing, right? And this actually gets back to this idea of being human-centered. We strip the human language out of it and we talk about leads and prospects and users and customers. And it's like, there's a person behind the screen. There's a person behind that row in the spreadsheet. And so it's super interesting, right? This idea, I'll give a nitty-gritty example of a marketing qualified lead. And marketing nerds, we rip ourselves to pieces talking about MQLs. Is the MQL dead? MQLs aren't actual leads. We have to have MQLs because otherwise we can't judge the quality of what we're passing to sales, right? The core issue with MQLs is that we can't agree on a definition. And even internally, people can't agree on a definition of what is a lead. And then obviously what is a marketing qualified lead versus a sales qualified lead, right? For the teams that actually get alignment, they have a definition. The rest of the world does not need to agree on whether that definition is right. But internally at that company, the whole marketing team and the whole sales team has to agree on what constitutes a lead. Is it anybody that fills out a form? Is it anybody that comes to the website? Is it anybody that gets scanned at a booth? Is it anybody that opens an email? Or is it only people who literally raise their hand and say, I want to talk to sales? Is it only people who say, I have a budget and you're on my short list? Is it only people who do a request an RFP, right? Those are very different mindsets. I obviously have an opinion about which is the correct mindset, but if you are not in agreement about the definitions, you're going to struggle to work together. And that's what I see most often is different between the different people, right? And especially from a metrics perspective, we can't agree on metrics. And in some cases, we end up cannibalizing each other because we aren't willing to like count certain things. And so if it lives on this platform, then this team gets the credit. Well, I'm not going to give you that asset because then I don't get the credit. You're telling me I have to work on it, but it's going to go sit on your landing page? Nope, not giving it to you. Okay, so now we're going to have two separate teams create two separate assets on the exact same topic, and we're going to sit them in different places, and we're going to run ads to drive traffic to them. And then we're going to like wonder why one of us gets a better leads. Like, why are we doing that nonsense? Years ago, I worked in a company where there were some account managers who were not particularly collaborative. And basically, if their teams didn't have capacity to serve a new customer, they would just tell that person that they couldn't serve. Like, sorry, we don't have capacity. What are you doing? Like, Aaron, if you don't have capacity, give it to Ken. Well, but then Ken might look like he's doing more business than me. Are you kidding me? Like, we can say that it originated with you, but for goodness sake, the business will grow if Ken has capacity that you give him that business, right? And that I think is the biggest thing, this idea of credit and speaking past each other and not understanding we have to have shared goals. I get it that each team and umbrella of skills within the bigger marketing discipline, we do need to have specialists. We need to have generalists. We need to have work streams so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. But none of that should be exposed to the audience. The audience should not see the handoffs between people with different skills or different titles. We need to work that out ourselves. And the problem is when we talk about shipping our org chart, what that usually means is exposing the handoffs to the audience. And that's where it's frictionful, right? That if you've got to go over here because, I can't help you. What do you mean you can't help me and I have to go over there? No, you pick me up and take me and drop me in the right place, right? I should not experience the friction that, you and your colleague can't talk to each other properly. So that's, I think the three things is shared language, shared metrics, and then not exposing those handoffs externally. Keep that nonsense internal and make that seamless to your external audience.
A company I'm working with is doing a marketing team is they were using ChatGPT 5 to create agents that are different personas internally that they have to present to. So it's like, act like our product leader. And they put in like their personality assessment. Like they created like a digital twin of someone they're trying to pitch their ideas to so that they can speak in their language. And I was like, that's so clever. We need to do that because marketers struggle with building that connection. And a lot of groups do, but I as a marketer, I'm like, I feel our pain the most.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great use case for a ChatGPT, or in our case, we use Rovo a lot. And the nice thing is, particularly if you've got tools that are built in. So for us, Rovo has access to the Confluence pages and our Jira tickets and all of that. And so you could literally be like, pretend like you're Ashley Faus, right? Like, here's a few pages that she's written, or like, go look at all the work that she's done and the pages she contributes to. How might she respond to this thing or that thing? So I think that's a really cool use case, especially if you're able to hook it into your internal systems so that it has access to the actual work that I've produced.
It's really neat. Thinking about definitions, because I think this is also kind of helpful, is you run lifecycle marketing and it's become really popular, especially for mature marketing organizations. How do you think about it? Because it's like, it could be, expansion and loyalty. It could be driving awareness. Like, what does that look like? And how does AI help to enable some of those personalized touch points?
So for us, and obviously I am one of the lifecycle marketing marketers at Atlassian. So it is a fairly sizable team. Again, we're a large company at this point. So we've got teams assigned to different portfolios. And it does run the full gamut. It can be expansion in terms of buying more of the products that you already have. It could be upgrades. So go from standard to premium or premium to enterprise. It could be cross sells. So buying the next product in our portfolio. And it could be retention where, in some cases, if we've signed large multi-year deals, and those deals come due, it's like, all right, please renew. And obviously we'll have that conversation about buying more, or buying something else, or buying bigger. So for us, it is all of those things. And it does include acquisition as part of that life cycle. So so it's interesting, right? There's a lot of things that we're able to do from an AI perspective in terms of helping to match the right message to the right people in the right time, the right systems. And we use a variety of tools to do that. Obviously, it has to go through a vetting process from a security, privacy, compliance. We operate globally. And so we are very cognizant of the different rules, laws, laws, sensitivities, requirements, et cetera, across the world. But yeah, we do quite a bit of that from an ad perspective, from an email perspective, from a landing page perspective. So, and then obviously from a content perspective, being able to change the tone or change things from a localization perspective, since we do work globally. And we work with a number of partners who also have incorporated AI practices and AI tools into their workflows. So yeah, it's something that we are constantly looking at, but again, very cognizant of the compliance, security, privacy, data residency, all of those things. So yeah, won't get into too many specifics on all of that, but I will say that we're very cognizant of those elements.
So Ashley, one of our favorite segments this season is our gladiator round. We could even have it be a muscle competition, bodybuilding competition round where it's a bit of show and tell. Are you game to show us and the audience something that you've been working on?
I am. I was going to try to find, so I'll pull up one interesting use case, which I'm actually about to dive into it. But I did it last year for Inbound. I was doing a debate, and the debate was titled "Creator versus Corporate: Which Marketer Creates Better Content?" And so, funny enough, I was actually arguing in favor of corporate marketers being better at creating content. So I'm well versed in this topic. I can argue either side of this topic. My debate partner also, same way, his name's Terry Rice. He actually ran basically like creator and influencer partnerships at a couple of big companies, and then now partners with creators and is a creator himself. So he's been on both sides of it. And so we can both argue this topic to death. Like, we're well versed in it. So I actually used ChatGPT to help me prep for the debate, and basically like argued with myself and as my opponent. And I got it to poke holes in my argument. I got it to help me do some research. And basically it's something where I could have done the research myself and opened 20 Google tabs to try to find stuff. But I was like, here's what I want to know, cite your sources. Where did you get this information? Just, make sure it doesn't hallucinate.
It's funny you mentioned that. My son was doing a debate of, is Odysseus like a good character or a bad character? And I was like, go to ChatGPT and debate with it. Like, it was a whole debate, and like they did like a mock trial. I love that use case.
Yeah. Okay. I think y'all are seeing my screen, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm in ChatGPT, and this is basically, I'm like, remember when we were working on my debate? And here it is. And it's like, yes, I remember you were prepping this whole argument, and I gave it some examples of folks from my network, who, have credibility on some of this kind of stuff. And of course, in true ChatGPT format, it's like, how did the debate go? Do you need anything? I'm like, oh, the debate went well. And obviously, without Terry here to dispute it, I'm like, everyone said I was on fire and I love it. And I won the debate, right? I'm sure he would disagree. But I said, lots of people asked me to share a recap of the key points. So I want you to help me to write some scripts for some videos. And so, basically and again, this feels like a very standard use case, but because it had all the context of it helped me prep all of the points for both my opponent and for myself, I could basically just say like, cool, write me this script instead of having to upload a full transcript or upload the full video of it. Anyway, so it basically broke it down, and then I'm like, we need a summary to start. And, based on all the points you helped me write, what links do you think I should make? I want to put it on LinkedIn. So it should be a style that mimics TikTok. It's got these, snappy insights, right? And then it's, obviously giving me all of these intros. So I think like the debate prep itself, let me stop sharing my screen. The debate prep itself, I think, is the more interesting piece of this, because a lot of people now are well versed in how to use it to get it to do a summary or a video script. But I think that like sparring with it as an additional partner, or sparring with it from a debate perspective and getting it to poke holes. One of my prompt questions was, if you were my opponent, what argument do you hope I will make? Because it's so easy to refute. And so ChatGPT, if I was your opponent, I'd love for you to say this, right? And and then I asked it, I was like, if you're my opponent, what arguments are you worried that I'll make, right? And so it gave me some of those things. So that's an area that I think is interesting. And then the fact that it has the context, when I came back to it and said, you remember you have all this context, so write me these scripts. It saves me a ton of time to not have to go format a transcript or copy and paste a transcript or wait to upload a whole video where it's like, oh my gosh, this is an hour long, like hustle up. So that's another piece, I think, just from a workflow perspective, using it for the research and the prep makes it so much easier to then use it for the recaps and the summaries and the, in this case, modular content. If it's like, hey, decompose this from the big thing that you created into 3 to 5 short form videos. But yeah, I think that was my most unique use case. I went back and forth with it for several days where I was like, I thought of something else. What about this? And I actually at one point exported it into Word so that I could have it just like take it and copy and paste it into the notes and stuff. But yeah, I think it exported out to be like 22 pages of just back and forth and research and arguments. And like I had it write my little opening paragraph, and obviously I edited it. I'm not going to just go exactly with what it said, but it made me a nice opening paragraph. So yeah, I think that's my most interesting use case is the debate.
Oh, I like it. That's a thumbs up for me. I think I could totally see a seller using that too. Like the question around, what would you like me to ask? Like, what are the real traps and holes? Like, I don't know. If I was a seller, I would totally take that away.
Yeah. It's one of the coolest things about ChatGPT, especially, this 5th edition or 5th OS that they have, is it's able to go back to and track your conversations and remember what you've talked about. So now I think one of the differentiators that ChatGPT has versus Gemini or Claude is actually the ability to be like, oh yeah, no, wait, I remember we've talked about this. So I can go back the last 9 months and we can actually have a conversation about the timeline or how things have evolved in your thinking or what's changed with the debate. I think that's going to be a really cool thing that people can leverage. So I love seeing that follow-up conversation too.
Yeah, it was fun. I do need to. So I'm doing another debate at Inbound about founder-led marketing, and so I need to go through and run my arguments with ChatGPT.
One of the things you have talked about is rethinking your role every 18 months to avoid stagnation, and I think that is something every marketer should be thinking about, especially now with the rapid change of AI. What does that look like for you, especially when things feel a little ambiguous?
I think the biggest thing is just the mindset shift to think of it that way and think of the timeline. I think a lot of people are constantly thinking about how to get their next promotion or how to leave their current company. I don't think of it that way. Obviously, I've been at Atlassian for almost 8 years. I've held a number of roles in that time across a variety of different teams. And so I think the mindset that the only way to grow is to get the very next promotion or to leave, like, I think that's actually the mindset shift is no. I say I look for a new job every 18 months. And then if you look through my history, I've changed jobs roughly every 2 years. In some cases, I've gotten promoted. In some cases, I've switched teams. Maybe it's a lateral move, but I've changed teams or specialties. And so even though I've been at Atlassian for 8 years, I have kind of changed jobs roughly every 2 years, either through promotion or team changes. And the idea of what is a job, right? I think that is the key mindset shift, because the jobs I was doing when I first graduated college are very different than the jobs I'm doing now. And it's not just because I'm more senior. The people at the fresh college graduates are doing completely different jobs than I was doing when I first graduated college. So it's not just a shift of I'm more senior and I have more and different skills now. It's the job market is changing. And so I think if you can make that shift to say, what are the skills? What are the tools? What are the sources of information that I need? That's the mindset shift to then constantly be just paying attention. Like the other interesting thing, I read a lot of job descriptions, and not just because like, oh, she's constantly looking for another job. It's like, I actually read a lot of job descriptions at all levels. One, from a hiring perspective, so that I can keep a pulse on who I might want to hire. But if you look at all of that in aggregate, it starts to give you a really good sense of where the industry is going. Yeah. And so it's funny to me because there's a whole conversation about product marketing and everyone being like, it's this brand new role and what do PMMs even do? And I'm like, PMM is not a new role. And like, this has been around for a long time. And like, here's the growth path for a PMM. Here's the differentiated skills set of a PMM versus a content marketer, a demand gen marketer, a digital or performance marketer. Like, what are you talking about this? What's a PMM? Like, maybe it's just a tech thing. I don't know. But for me, I've been seeing that evolution because I've been looking at the job descriptions across all levels for years, right? One of the things when I decided to go get my MBA, everybody asked me, should I get an MBA? Should I get a master's in marketing? Do I need for, future education at all? I got my MBA almost 15 years ago. So I would say it's actually a very different calculation then than it is now. But what I did is I basically went and looked at all the job descriptions for a VP of marketing or a CMO, and every single one of them said MBA required or MBA preferred. None of them said Master of Marketing. And I basically figured out that the Master of Marketing takes you down an academic path. And that's how you become a professor, you go get your doctorate, whatever, right? But that's what I did to figure out that I should get the MBA and not the Master of Marketing. And so I'm looking at that same thing now where I'm like, what is the CMO? The next thing for me to get promoted into is not a CMO role. But if I go look at what the CMO job descriptions want right now, and I look at all the job descriptions a step or two behind me, I see what that trajectory looks like for the next 15 years. And that allows me to say, okay, where am I on these skills, both for the people who are coming up behind me, my peer set, and the people who are ahead of me. And whenever they start to hire and I get promoted, here's what I need, right? That's a completely different mindset than I'm looking for a new job in the next 6 months, right? So, and the fact that I'm doing that constantly, it means that about the time where I start to get antsy or start to get bored, right, I have already had the exposure, started to build the skills or noticed the gaps so that I'm not coming up and basically telling my boss, like, okay, it's time for me to have a new job, whether that's a promotion or a lateral move or whatever. And then she's like, okay, you've got some significant gaps that are going to take you 6 to 12 months to solve. But now I'm already frustrated because I feel behind, right? So, yeah. And then it also just from a general conversation, trust building standpoint with my manager, it doesn't feel urgent when I bring these things up, right? I say, hey, I've been looking at this and I'm noticing this pattern. What are you seeing? Or, hey, I read this interesting article. Like, what do you think about this? Or starting those conversations internally. Nobody feels stressed. And same thing with me posting on LinkedIn. Nobody is stressed that I post on LinkedIn. So I must be looking to leave, right? If you're constantly doing this and having the conversations, it builds that trust all the way around that you've got your pulse on the market. You're building your skills in a way that future-proof you, and your bosses and your peers have a heads up in terms of like, okay, she knows that she's got to keep sharp on these skills.
Yeah, it's helping you, which I think is really powerful, especially right now when AI is coming so quickly for a lot of things that marketers have done for a long time, right? So it shows that you're taking ownership of your own destiny. But to your point also, it shows your leaders that you want to do more stuff. And, I often was excited when I found someone on my team who was like, hey, like on top of what I already was doing, I really dove into this project because I was just curious about it. And that's how you find your next role. So it's a great mindset to share. So Ashley, this has been an incredible conversation. To wrap us up, we do a little bit of a lightning round where we ask you some questions and we want your just quick response. Are you up for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. Let's start with this one. What's one AI tool or workflow marketers are seriously sleeping on?
Yeah, I'm going to be highly biased and say Atlassian Rovo. I know it's our tool, but I think there's some cool stuff, especially our agents. We've got a ton of out-of-the-box agents that you can use, and we have a lot of third-party integrations as well. So it doesn't have to just be like only used in Confluence or only used in Jira. But yeah, Atlassian Rovo has got some really cool stuff.
What's a recent idea, marketing or otherwise, you can't stop thinking about?
Yeah, a recent idea. So this is, and again, it's very much in the vein of AI. Basically, this idea that if AI takes all of the like 101 and 201 level jobs, how do we have the leaders and the skills to do the 501, 601, like very advanced stuff in the next 3 to 5 years? Basically, all of us cut our teeth in kind of the trenches. And so if AI is taking the trenches away, how do you get those leaders? So that's something that I've been kind of thinking about a lot in terms of how do we still build up the future generation, not just of marketers, but of leaders, managers, et cetera, if a lot of that foundational work that helps to create those leaders and the expertise from a marketing perspective goes away.
What's a GTM AI hill you'll die on?
Marketing. AI is not going to replace all marketers. I'm sorry. This is just straight nonsense. Like, we can talk about other professions, but this idea that like, I'm starting to see it where, people are bragging about, oh, I replaced 30 marketers with one AI agent. No, you freaking didn't. And show your receipts because you're just not. You're not.
I'm with you. Sorry, I'm biased, but yes. What's something overrated in B2B marketing?
Overrated in B2B marketing. Oof. And I think this is maybe the next question about a hill I'll die on, but gated content. Man, can we just not like we've swung back around with all the latest attribution tools and AI. We've swung back around to gating everything. You can't do anything on the internet without gating it. Even on LinkedIn, this like comment viral to get my gated PDF. Oh my gosh, just put your stupid PDF up as a blog post. No one wants your 20-page PDF by commenting, get it free. So I will say gated content, like it's overrated and we've swung back around. And I'm not happy about it.
A really funny way to get around gated content, and I'll tell you later. What's one thing you wish you could DM to all go-to-market professionals on Slack?
Attribution should not be about credit. Like giving credit to a specific team is not what attribution is supposed to be for. I can tell you, like, do we need another podcast about attribution? I'm like, oh, we can have that conversation.
That would be a good one. That'd be a good one. We may bring you back for round 2.
Yeah, the lightning round. I feel like we hit on so many sweet topics that people, I think, really feel those. Anyway, Ashley, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us. I know I learned a lot and I'm very confident our listeners did too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
All right, Ken, we're back. That was a really fun conversation. Tell me, what were your key takeaways?
Yeah, I would say the overall takeaway was we were talking about AI. Right? We actually were talking about how work gets done and what's changing in marketing and what needs to change to connect with buyers. And I really found that really exciting with someone who's a lifecycle marketer because they just have a perspective that's the complete view of engagement with the buyer. And so that was really powerful. The last thing that she said really stuck with me about the redefining your job every 18 months to define stagnation. And with AI, redefining your job probably every 6 to 9 months is the way to go based on what they're seeing in the market, what functionalities available through ChatGPT or Gemini or another thing that doesn't even exist yet. And also what buyer habits and what a great mindset to have. But this is kind of the agility that marketers in particular, go-to-market professionals are going to need. So I think she's really onto something and I can't wait to read her book.
Yeah, I really also love the idea of looking at job descriptions that are, people that are senior to you and the people coming up. And I hadn't really thought about doing that too much. So I might add that to my to-do list.
That's really cool. Yeah. What about you? What did you take away?
I really love the content playground idea. I think that, that whole, we all do sort of like a brain dump or like, but doing like the actual exercise of having like the sticky notes and being able to do it virtually even, I think was really cool. And then I think even taking that and dropping it into AI to identify the key themes. So I could totally see, like I mentioned when we were talking with her, a world where you take all those sticky notes, put them in Notebook LM, and then do the mind map. And then you have some really compelling themes that you could pursue that folks like kind of see as being important. So I thought that was a cool idea.
It's like the new way to connect with your buyers in 2025 is with the playground.
Yeah. And shouldn't it be fun? I love the idea also of calling it playground because I feel like AI is kind of like playing.
It totally is. Your vibe, playground.
Vibing, play vibe. I don't know. There's something there that listeners can give us a better idea of what we should call this new thing.
Yeah, exactly. We'll send you a free sweatshirt. Come their name for it. Maybe we'll ask it.
Okay. But not ChatGPT.
See, now Lisa Frank and ChatGPT, OpenAI are going to.
Yeah, they've got you on their dartboard.
I'll take the Lisa Frank haters first. Great. Well, this has been another fantastic episode. Thank you again, Ashley, for joining us. And thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard today, give it a like, subscribe, a heart, follow us, and share with a friend because it's up there to more.
Yeah. And did want to give a note that we're going to be offline for a few weeks to maybe a month and a half as things are kind of getting into the swing of things of fall. We're just really excited with the guests that we're lining up and going to be interviewing. And we'll have more for you in short order in this longer season 2 than last season, the extended version.
More content coming your way.
Love it. And with that, let's keep crafting the future of AI and go-to-market together. Thank you. Bye-bye.